We move now to the public hearing for an airport improvement project involving relocation of proposed fuel farm at the Georgetown Municipal Airport. Just a few ground rules, if I could. Making sure everybody that wishes to speak at the public hearing has filled out a form. I've got several here, so if you haven't filled one out, get that to Janet. Okay, each speaker is going to have 3 minutes. There's a clock in the back, and there's also a clock on the dais. So you have 3 minutes. We've asked each speaker to come to the dais to speak. And before we start that process, we're going to ask Russ Volk, our airport manager, to present an overview of the project. I just wanted to make sure that to those that are speaking, if you would please, before, include your address, phone number, email, other identification in your comments. You be advised that your entire comments, including your personal identification information, may be made publicly at any time. While you can ask us in your comments to withhold from public review your personal identifying information, we cannot guarantee that we can do so. Also, just as a reminder, we are here to take your comments. By law, we cannot comment and ask questions of you, so we're here to take your comments at this public hearing. So with that, before we ask Mr. Russ Volk, our airport manager, to update us on this project.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, board members, and members of the public. The purpose of this briefing is to cover again the proposed fuel farm and the actual draft environmental assessment as published through public notice. It is a public meeting related to the draft environmental assessment. I actually have a paper copy that I brought with me for those that haven't ventured over to the library or down to text.aviation or downloaded it from the airport's website. It is available at those locations. And so with that, I'll get into this quick slide presentation. We're going to go through this sequence of topics, including the environmental review process for the project components, the sequence we've been through so far, and plan sequence, the schedule, and some additional airport improvements that we'll be doing simultaneously with the fuel farm. The environmental review process, this is a simplistic bullet statement list of conducting an environmental review, prepare a draft environmental document, in this case an environmental assessment, solicit public participation, address public comments, and then do a finalization of the environmental review process. The project components that we're addressing in the environmental assessment in this draft document consist of the existing fuel farm system and the proposed new fuel farm at the airport. The existing fuel farm facility is consisting of underground tanks, and to point out on this overhead visual, where the pointer is at is the airport terminal at the end of Terminal Drive. The fuel farm does consist of underground tanks. One of them is located approximately this location right here, along with a bulk dispenser. This is the avgas current system. And then the Jet A system is further down just off of this picture on the opposite side of the terminal. And these two airplanes pull up to the current location of our two self-serve pumps for them to be able to fuel their own aircraft for avgas purchases. The Jet A dispenser, because we do have two different bulk dispensers, one for Jet A and one for avgas, are located out on the same concrete apron. There's the one for avgas. And so the FBO fuel trucks pull up to the bulk dispensers where we distribute bulk fuel into their fuel trucks. In addition to that, located on this same concrete apron in close proximity to parked aircraft, and in this case, in close proximity to aircraft attempting to use the self-serve pumps, we have to download the 18-wheeler tanker trucks that come in from the fuel vendor in order to put them into the existing fuel system. The new system configuration and layout. Once again, this is an overhead picture. This is the airport terminal. This is the Jet A underground fuel storage tank with bulk dispenser. This is the avgas fuel underground fuel storage tank with dispenser. And there are the existing self-serve pumps. The new configuration looks like this. They will be above ground fuel storage tanks located in this area. The bulk dispensers will also be located with the fuel tanks, and all of this will be inside a containment vessel to protect from ground contamination. This new driving area is going to remove an existing terminal parking lot, but now the 18-wheelers will come in, pull into a shallow recessed area for spill containment, and do the downloads directly into the new fuel systems and fuel farms. Plus, the FBO fuel trucks will also enter this same driveway to access the bulk dispensers, where we will fill them, no longer commingling them with the airplanes. So all trucks activity will be on this side. And by the way, this is also fenced. And then the new 2 self-serve pumps will be located in this vicinity, move slightly down closer to the actual new fuel farm. So we'll have the same capability for self-serve through 2 pumps as we currently have. The new fuel farm system is designed to hold 15,000 gallons of avgas, 1 tank, an additional tank for 20,000 gallons of Jet A. Once again, it will have a concrete containment structure for both the tanks, the dispensers, and the refueling areas where the trucks pull in. And it will have 2 new dual avgas dispensers for those that choose to use self-serve instead of using the FBOs. The sequence of events so far, this is a chronological order of when the process began. December of 2014, a consultant was hired to begin the environmental review process. A preliminary draft environmental assessment was made available in late February of 2015. Early March, it was made available to the public for a 30-day public participation period, which ended I believe it was the 7th of April. TxDOT Aviation, the airport, and the consultant reviewed those comments during the periods of April through July to address any public comments. Then in August of 2015, this latest version of the draft environmental assessment was developed and published. For anyone that initially submitted public comments during the March 30-day period, they were given an advance copy on September 4th. Today we're holding the public hearing, and then for the next 30 days following this hearing is another opportunity for public participation to provide written comments. And then later on this year, we will finalize the environmental review process. Completion schedule is based upon the findings of the entire document, formalizing the environmental assessment into a final environmental assessment with anticipated resulting of a finding of no significant impact. Following that, TxDOT will make a grant award available to the city of Georgetown. We will then enter a bidding process for the construction phase and begin construction early 2016, scheduled for a little over a year. Of course, with delays and stuff, it could take quite a bit longer. Some additional airport improvement projects are going to be accomplished at the same time during the construction process. All of these items have already been previously cleared of environmental issues and have went through the FAA guidelines on environmental review and compliance. So the draft EA is only on the fuel farm. But these are greatly needed airport improvements to include construction of a new parallel taxiway, reconfiguring of the terminal apron because of relocation of the self-serve pumps, rehabilitating taxiways and aprons to include crack seal and seal coating of asphalt pavements, replacing that terminal parking lot we're removing for that new driveway, adding taxiway lighting and signage, adding additional precision approach path instrumentation on runway 1129, clearing obstructions in the clear zones, relocating a perimeter fence, relocating a fire hydrant, and performing some drainage improvements on the airport. This is an overhead view of the current configuration of the airport. A little bit more blown up version. To give you an idea, the clear zones are here at the end of the runway, and these obstructions all have to be removed. This vegetation line is an open ditch inside an area that we're going to enclose with a concrete culvert, just to give you an idea about some of the other projects. This is the current main taxiway for the main runway, which is the north-south runway of 1836. The airplanes enter or depart to each end. They actually have to taxi down by the terminal apron and then proceed north or south. This is the current taxiway structure for the crosswind runway of 1129. And I want to focus your attention on this choke point, because this is one of the items being addressed through the new taxiway. By the way, this is the parked airplanes that are out there continually on the terminal apron. And this has a choke point because of 4 taxiways intersecting at this point. So based upon those issues as well as other FAA guidelines, this is the proposed new parallel taxiway. It'll give us some alternate routes around that choke point. It will also address some issues down on the existing taxiway with issues related to object-free areas and safety zones. Of course, it will renumber, or retitle, I should say, the different taxiways, because each one now has its own designator. So instead of using the current 5 or so that we have in place, we'll go up through the letter M for Mike. And this will be the final layout. The black is new pavement, partly squaring off the apron, creating new access points, removing the choke point, and adding some pavement for the new fuel dispensers, the self-serve pumps. These are all safety improvements, bringing the airfield into current standards, removing that congestion around the terminal apron, the maintaining of existing pavements to try to extend their life expectancy, and obstruction removals, especially in the clear zones. That concludes my presentation. We looked at the existing and future fuel farm layouts, examined the fuel farm components, both current and proposed, went through the sequence of an environmental review up till now, the schedule for completion, and the additional airport improvement projects that are going to be covered built simultaneously along with the new fuel farm. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to say thank you.
Thank you, Russ. Thanks, Russ. Questions?
Russ, when do the underground tanks come out? Is that part of the contract?
Yes, it is. The underground, once the new fuel farm is built and in place and up and functioning, then the underground fuel storage tanks come out.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Russ. Okay, we'll now ask for the public hearing to begin. I have Mr. Dominic, and I would mess that name up, so. And again, we ask when you come up, you just state your name.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and the board. My name is Dr. Dominic DiPietri. I live at 3301 Canby Road in Georgetown, which falls in District 5. My wife, Dr. Esther Fields, and I co-own Georgetown Pulmonary Associates. And along with our partner, are the only pulmonary critical care physicians in the city. We have 2 young children, Nathaniel and Liam. Liam is in a pre-K special program at Frost Elementary School adjacent to the airport. I am adamantly opposed to the issuance of a finding of no significant impact pertaining to the proposal for a federal grant to to fund the fuel farm for Georgetown Municipal Airport, and I petitioned for a formal environmental impact survey. The funding is just a small part of a larger project proposed by the city and TxDOT to expand airport operations. The governing assumptions of the executive summary of the Georgetown Airport business analysis, established through discussions with airport and city staff, but not by the citizens, are that the Georgetown Airport is a key public transportation facility tied directly to the long-term economic well-being of Georgetown. And it specifically states that the potential upside for revenues tied to fueling operations, which I interpret as increased aircraft volumes. I believe there are other more appropriate opportunities for economic growth in our city. The summary also references an extension for the runway 1836, pardon me, to increase volumes and types of aircraft. It also states that extending the runway would likely generate some local neighborhood controversy, which is why I'm here. I'm actually stunned by the marketing approach to attract business aircraft owners who make airport decisions based on criteria listed in the analysis and summary, such as convenience to their executive residencies. Millions of dollars would be spent to construct longer runways, and that doesn't include the cost of moving roadways or purchasing property, mine or others. It boggles the mind that we would accommodate business executives so that they'll have a short hop to their house at the cost of local and federal tax dollars that my neighbors and I pay, so that we would ultimately be pushed right out of our own devalued homes. One of my neighbors who actually worked for the government locally for 30 years would likely have his own home condemned. And that would leave my personal home right at the edge of the airport, threatening my own family's entire financial stability. While at the same time, my wife and I work up to 100 hours a week each to accommodate the critical care medical needs of this community. The proposed enhancements, starting with the fuel farm, would negatively impact our neighborhood, our livelihood, our quality of life, and that of our children. The increased noise, pollution, and traffic unequivocally reduce our home and property values, including resale value. There's added disruption to our family's sleep hygiene, especially with aircraft coming and going in the early morning hours or at night. My son, Dominic Liam, suffers from pervasive developmental disorder on the autism spectrum. He requires consistent routines in his life with minimal disruption, including regular sleep-wake cycles and avoidance of environmental stressors. Thus, the draft environmental assessment of this project, consistent with the expansion plans of the airport, threatens a vulnerable portion of the citizenry, specifically my son. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, sir. Next, Mr. Valentine.
My name is Richard Valentine. I reside at 212 Estrella Crossing in Georgetown. I'm retired from the Environmental Protection Agency's Office of Water in Washington, D.C. I want to thank the City of Georgetown for finally cracking the door open to its responsibilities under the National Environmental Policy Act. This hearing is specifically limited to discussing one element of the city's 2015 CIP, which addresses construction and maintenance activities at Georgetown's airport. That element is the removal of two below-ground fuel storage tanks. In my comments on TxDOT's draft environmental assessment, I noted that the city had been fined some $7,000 by the Texas CEQ some years ago because of fuel leakage from these tanks. I therefore noted that it would be prudent to carefully evaluate the site upon removal of the old tanks, check for additional fuel leakage and perhaps the existence of a plume flowing down gradient from the tank's location before there is a backfilling occurs. These tanks are located on the recharge area for the Edwards Aquifer, a critically important water resource in an increasingly arid area. Noise pollution per se has not been addressed in the draft environmental assessment. That constitutes a major oversight since noise pollution adversely affects predominantly older people. Many areas around the airport, like Serenata and the Berry Creek subdivisions, have a significant percentage of older residents. The peer-reviewed literature clearly shows that noise is a significant cause of primarily cardiac events with subsequent hospitalizations. Another issue not addressed is a safety issue. Residences, an elementary school, a middle school, and the Georgetown Charter School are in close proximity to the airport boundary. Small Cessnas land at about 45 knots. Private jets in excess of 100 knots and are considerably heavier than a Cessna. An overshoot on a landing by a jet could be disastrous. Because of these shortcomings, a finding of no significant impact on the NEPA is absurd. Thank you.
Next is Judy Brown.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, council members. My name is Judy Brown. I reside at 100 Pilot Place, immediately north of the airport. I'm opposed to any FONSI for the fuel farm. In 2004, after decades of teaching, my husband and I moved to Georgetown to be near our children and grandchildren and to be of help to my parents. We chose our house carefully so that the whole family could enjoy the open space, the trees, the wildlife, the peace it provided. And so we could have room for my parents who lived with us from 2008 until their deaths 4 years later. After more than 10 years of work, both physical labor and extra jobs, we have created the home we want to live in for the rest of our lives, a gathering place for our extended family and neighbors. It is designated by the National Wildlife Federation as an advanced certified wildlife habitat, and in the spring we enjoy a neighborhood decorated with a fusion of wildflowers. During this time, the airport was a fairly good neighbor, but without any provision for discussion that we could find, and in spite of repeated verbal assurances that no airport expansion was planned, runways were lengthened, and traffic increased, adding to the fuel and noise pollution of our neighborhood. Lights were added, which erased much of the splendor of the night sky. Now, if it weren't for the vigilance of a neighbor, we would not have been aware of this meeting to discuss plans for a huge increase in fuel storage. At the least, this would lead to more traffic, more noise, more fuel pollution, more risk for the natural environment and for our family, especially the children who love to run and play outside at Mill Haven, the name they gave us for our house. At worst, more fuel would lead to more risks of crashes, more risk of explosion, more runway expansion. This action would rob us of our home, rob our children and grandchildren of their inheritance. We are not the only family who will be affected. Some have been here coexisting with the airport for over 30 years. Some are caring for elderly parents, children, or grandchildren. Some, like the young doctors, the Carrot Tree that you heard from, and Fields, just built a home in which to raise their little boys. They have devoted their lives to caring for the people of Georgetown. Your action will put them and many other families at risk. Do not make this disastrous mistake. There are other options available, such as relocating or repurposing the airport, relocate to a different property that would allow for long-term growth without ruining neighborhoods. We are opposed to any FONSI and demand a full and comprehensive EIS. We, the people of Georgetown, demand the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness here in our Georgetown.
Mr. Jerry Brown.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and council members. My name is Jerry Brown, and I reside at 100 Pilot Place immediately north of the airport. During my almost 50 years of teaching, I've always encouraged my students at every level to be active in their community. It would be foolish of me not to set an example for them and others I continue to influence. Therefore, I am here to speak in opposition to any increase in fuel storage without a full and comprehensive environmental impact statement. More fuel could lead to more risk of crashes, more risk of explosions, and more runway expansion. I also speak for those in the neighborhoods around the airport who are unaware of developments because of the lack of communication by the city in a clear and public manner. Over 10 years ago, our family carefully chose the property we now own, examining the area including animal and plant life. The residential area surrounding the airport includes a variety of trees that are 200 to 400 years old, as well as a wide variety of wildlife. Our property is designated by the National Wildlife Federation as an advanced certified wildlife habitat. And each fall, I continue to plant more wildflowers in the meadows on the property to continue the encouragement of the presence of wildlife, especially bees, which are currently endangered. Since the airport is already surrounded by a residential area that continues to expand, it seems that Georgetown might well follow the example of Austin by moving the airport to another location and developing the current airport into a residential commercial area, which would help to offset the cost of the new airport. This would also preserve the current wildlife from further exposure to noise, light, and fuel pollution, as well as enhancing the current residential housing and providing additional housing space for families continuing to move to this area. Therefore, I strongly oppose any findings of no significant impact being issued for the fuel farm. Instead, a full and complete environmental impact statement should be prepared not only for the Airport 2015 Capital Improvement Plan, but for any federal grants issued for the GTU in the past decade. I further firmly request that the National Environmental Policy Act federal grant review process used by the city and TxDOT for our airport be reviewed and corrected. Thank you.
Francis DeSalle.
My name is Francis DeSalle. I reside at 212 Estrella Crossing in Georgetown. The fuel farm, the subject of this hearing, is one of 25 elements included in the Georgetown Municipal Airport 2015 Capital Improvement Program. To extract the fuel farm from the 25 elements in the Airport Capital Improvement Program is a practice referred to as segmentation, which directly violates the spirit and the intent of the National Environmental Policy Act. It is of the utmost importance that the 2015 Airport Capital Improvement Program and its 25 components be considered as a single airport development project in order to assess and evaluate the impacts of the program on the Georgetown community, its citizens, and its impact on the environment. I oppose the issuance of a finding of no significant impact being issued for the fuel farm. An environmental impact statement must be prepared for all of the elements reflected in the Airport 2015 Capital Improvement Program in order to assess and evaluate impacts on human populations, impacts on the ecosystem, and other important and pertinent considerations. Thank you.
Next, Mr. Greenslate.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, board members. I'm Ted Greenslate. My address is 307 Palmetto Drive, which is in Sun City. It's been many years since I have spoken or addressed a public body, but I felt the need to come down here today after reading more and more about the proposed airport expansion. My wife and I moved to Georgetown a little less than 5 years ago, or I should say we fled here a little under 5 years ago, because of exactly what you're considering today. And I felt the need to come down here because I have lived the dream that you all are considering today. I have lived in a house where, not too far from an antiquated airport, where the city fathers failed to acknowledge that the location of that airport was now obsolete. And rather than propose a relocation or an alternative use for that facility, they chose to pump millions of dollars into it to enhance the airport traffic, to get larger planes to land, and fuel sales. They were driven by that. And that's why that condition exists. So I have laid in my bed and I have heard jets coming over my house at 5:30 and 6 in the morning. And that is not something that you want. And I would like to remind you that the public servants of the city of Georgetown, their responsibility, their primary charge, first and foremost, is to protect the safety and welfare of the citizens of this community. Secondly, it's to promote and protect the integrity and the quality of life of the city of Georgetown, which is what attracted us here in the first place. And I would finally suggest to you, this proposal before you today does not serve that purpose. Thank you.
Mr. Milford?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, board members, and fellow neighbors. Thank you for coming. My name is John Milford. I live at 4307 Cordova Circle in Georgetown. This project to build a new above-ground fuel facility with 60% more fuel capacity at the Georgetown Airport is designed to attract and support more and larger aircraft that will take off and land at Georgetown Airport. This project to increase the stored fuel capacity by more than 60%, like other planned development projects, will directly contribute to the increase of aviation noise, takeoff landings, maintenance and run-ups, community safety, crashes into houses, schools, churches, businesses. To date, there have been 29 crashes and 9 deaths at the Georgetown Airport. Hazardous material exposure, airports store fuel and numerous toxic chemicals used for maintenance and flight operations. Property devaluation. A problematic noisy airport with safety concerns and a long history of citizens' complaints will affect property values. This project is part of a much larger airport development agreement between the City of Georgetown and TxDOT Aviation. As is defined in this agreement, it is in place specifically for the development of a public aviation facility. This agreement and all of the development projects that make up it are focused on the common goal to expand and grow capacity and aircraft operations at the Georgetown Airport. This development project has been in place for many years. The 2014 version of this agreement is posted on the city's website. In the opening statement of this draft DEA for the new fuel facility, the writer attempts to segment this proposed action from the rest of the airport development projects in the much larger airport development agreement. This segmentation directly violates NEPA, National Environmental Policy Act law, and EPA regulations. One cannot cherry pick or segment an item from a much larger airport development agreement and treat it as though it's a benign item with no effect on the surrounding community. This project, combined with all the other airport development projects, will have a direct impact on increasing aviation noise, community safety concerns, hazardous material exposure, and decreasing property values. By EPA regulations, this project, along with all airport development agreement projects, must be viewed as a single airport development project. The entire project, all of its elements must be evaluated together to determine the short-term and long-term effects on the community and surrounding environment. In conclusion, I urge everyone to reject this draft DEA. Instruct the writers to return to the drafting table and put a process in place to perform a complete environmental impact statement, an EIS. An EIS that takes into account the fuel farm and all of the elements of the airport development agreement project plans. A process that will examine any practical alternatives to expansion, such as airport relocation. The environmental impact statement is the only process that can fully examine the short, long-term direct impacts this and other projects in the airport development agreement will bear on the surrounding community, its citizens, and environment. Thank you all.
Thank you. Ms. Zinner?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, board members, and neighbors that are here today. My name is Nancy Zinner, and I reside with my husband at 901 Bosque Trail. We bought our property in 1985. At the time, our house was the last house on a dead-end street. We had acreage on 2 sides of us covered with beautiful oak trees. We were neighbors to the Georgetown Airport and enjoyed watching the gliders and aircraft that use the airport. Let's fast forward to today, and times have changed. Georgetown is no longer a sleepy bedroom community of Austin. In my opinion, the Georgetown Airport has outgrown its present location. I am opposed to any issuance of a notice of no significant impact for the fuel farm. The fuel farm is only one of 25 components of the Airport 2015 CIP. We need to stop pumping money into a landlocked airport surrounded by homes and with schools and churches in the flight paths. I'm in favor of the city re-implementing the Georgetown Airport Advisory Board that was dissolved in 2013. By carefully selecting people of diverse backgrounds and aviation knowledge, these people can study the best solution for our airport that can effectively serve our city and county that is growing so fast, but still ensure the safety and well-being of our citizens and those of surrounding communities, as well as protecting our environment. I request a preparation of a full environmental impact statement for the proposed 1514 Georgetown federal grant for the 25-component Airport 2015 Capital Improvement Plan. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Zenner? Pete Zenner?
My name is Pete Zenner, and I live with my wife Nancy at 901 Bosque Trail, just north of the existing airport fence line. There seems to be a misunderstanding on the city staff's and city council's part regarding the desire of the Airport Concerned Citizens, or ACC, to close the airport. Nothing is further from the truth. We are a group of concerned citizens who would like for our city government to be receptive to citizen input regarding airport issues, and to make a concerted effort to openly present to the public all 25 components of the 2015 CIP through television and newspaper outlets, as well as mail-outs to the public. This would be a perfect opportunity for city government to explain in detail each component of the plan, not just the fuel farm facility issue presented today. In my opinion, having a hearing at 10 o'clock on a weekday and a work day does not give much opportunity for feedback from the entire citizenry. Please do a better job of informing the public regarding this plan and giving citizens a legitimate opportunity for input. Therefore, because of concerns for safety, noise increases, environmental issues, and a loss of property values, I am opposed to any issuance of a notice of no significant impact for the fuel farm, and request preparation of a full EIS for the proposed federal grant for the 25-component Airport 2015 CIP. Thank you.
Mr. Haynes, Joe Haynes?
Sue Haynes.
Jim.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and the board, and to my fellow citizens. I live at 802 Cielo Drive, which is just north of the airport, and I am vehemently opposed to this fuel farm and to any further expansion of the airport. I spent 2.5 hours looking for the 2030 master plan online, and I waded through that very long document and through all the appendices, and if you go to Appendix C and scroll down to page 12, you will see an overlay map of the airport's planned expansion. It is very clear to me, even if I'm not the sharpest tack in the box, that this fuel farm, the oxbow that was put into Lakeway Drive, the clearing of all that property at what turns out to be the end of the runway, which wasn't clear to me until I'd seen that map, is all part of the huge airport expansion that will go on long after I'm dead. And I don't want to see that, and I think my fellow citizens don't want to see it either. Keep it the same size if that's what you want, but don't make it any bigger, please. We all moved to Serenata which is a beautiful place, but it won't be when you get done with it. Thank you.
Lori Ford.
Thank you. My name is Lori Ford, and my husband and I have lived in Georgetown for 17 years, and we reside at 3801 Roble Grande Circle. Due to the time set for this meeting, my husband, Raleigh Ford, was unable to attend and wanted to make the following statement. It is clear that an expansion of the fuel farm will enable expansion of the Georgetown Municipal Airport in Georgetown, Texas. I have 30 years of public school experience and more than half as an administrator. Any expansion of the Georgetown Airport will have an adverse effect on the education of thousands of students in Georgetown. The noise-sensitive map that was submitted with a grant only shows 3 schools and overstates the distance from the airport property. 3 schools which have been open for many years are entirely omitted. The charter school that directly borders the airport property and located at Northwest and Serenado, Gateway Tech High School, located between Dawn Drive and Williams behind Taco Bell, Georgetown Alternative School, which is not part of Georgetown High School and located at the corner of Stadium Drive and North Austin Avenue. A middle school and elementary school are within 2,000 feet of the airport property, and the flight pattern is near Georgetown High School and the Alternative School. The airport is near center of the city, and flight patterns, landing, and takeoff cover an enormous area of the city proper. The city of Georgetown will become Georgetown Airport City. What is ironic, the city wants to expand the airport, but there is no large Georgetown citizen group advocating its expansion. Only the opposite. A survey of who uses the airport and who benefits from the airport expansion shows that most of these people do not even live in Georgetown, and their children would not be harmed by any large airport. From the Transportation Research Board, as is evident from numerous studies, there is considerable body of research demonstrating that chronic exposure to noise is associated with learning defects in children. See citations in Special Note A. For example, a research study prepared for the European Union suggests that a simple 5 dB increase in noise exposure translates to a 2-month delay in reading scores. Now, we already have a problem with our scores, so we're trying to get those up. The data that supports the claim that students are harmed by airports is indisputable. Below are multiple links of studies that prove this point. Based on the federal grant proposal from the city to expand the capacity of the fuel farm to support an increase in aircraft operations, we are in total opposition to any FONSI for the fuel farm and demand for preparation of a full and comprehensive NEPA process environmental impact statement, EIS, for the GTU 2015 CIP and all federal grants in the past decade. Thank you.
I think it's Colin O'David, is that?
It's close.
Okay.
Not quite right.
Good morning, all. My wife and I, Charlotte, moved to Georgetown 10 years ago and took up residence in Serenada. And as the crow flies, or in a straight line, we're about half a mile from the airport. During this time, we've noticed a considerable increase in the traffic through this airport, especially jet aircraft. The level of noise has increased considerably. Airport FAA information dated August the 20th of 2015 advises that the property has the following aircraft placed in Georgetown: 225 single-engine aircraft, 20 multi-engine aircraft, 4 jet aircraft, and 4 helicopters. Approximately an average of 201 aircraft operations per day is advised. As a retired couple on a fixed income, We are definitely not interested in sitting here and watching the value of our properties go down. We are willing to accept the airport as it is and do not want to see any increase in size and noise. We are sure that any of the city council members, should they live in our area, would feel the same way. Any increase or expansion of the aircraft numbers, takeoffs and landings at the airport, disturbing noise both day and night, safety from aircraft, night takeoffs, landings, air quality, environmental issues of homes, schools and churches will all have an adverse effect on property values. These have and continue to be of utmost citizen concerns, and definitely ours. We are also amazed that this is the first ever public meeting that the City Fathers have arranged for input from us, the owners, the people of the airport and the citizens of Georgetown that is managed by the city. The city has other public meetings and advertised in the newspaper for roads and buildings, but never for the airport. We are aware that the fuel farm is only one of 25 components of the 215 CIP. It is the adverse direct, indirect and cumulative environmental impact of the 25 components of the airport CIP as a whole and past federal grants that must be examined. We strongly oppose any FONSI being issued for the fuel farm. Instead, we demand a full and complete environmental impact statement be prepared, not only for the airport 2015 CIP, but for all federal grants issued for GTU in the past decade. We further request that the flawed NEP federal grant review process used by the city and TxDOT for our airport be corrected. Thank you.
Terry Reed.
Good morning. My name is Terry Reed. Mary and I have lived at 4406 West Cordova Circle in Serenata for over 21 years. I'm opposed to any issuance of a notice of non-significant impact for the fuel farm and grant preparation of a full environmental impact statement for the proposed 1514 GRGNTN federal grant for the 25 component airport 2015 CIP. Thank you.
Mr. Swain.
Good morning. My address is 603 Del Prado. I am a retired teacher for the school district, and I oppose the finding of no significant impact and demand an environmental impact statement on this subject. Thank you.
Wendy Dew.
Hi everyone, I'm Wendy Dew, and my husband and I just moved to Georgetown. We live in Berry Creek and we love our new house and we spent lots of money and we're underwater on that one. So we're not going anywhere except feet first. So I'll tell you what, we just happen to be right in the path where all the airplanes fly. Well, I always thought it was kind of cute and darling and quaint because I love the little sputter of the little airplanes and all that. Well, I mean, either it wasn't happening before or I just didn't notice because I was busy. But I mean, there are planes that come down through there that lift the shingles off my house. I mean, I adopted a dog that's deaf and she's a little Maltese. She can't hear anything, but she hears those planes and barks her head off. And I'm just saying, you know, come on guys, what is that you're allowing to fly into that airport right now? That's stupid to be doing that in your own damn community. And you look at a map of Georgetown, the airport's right in the middle of your town and our town. You expand that, you're going to destroy this beautiful, quaint community that you have. And I'm telling you what, it's just like my mom used to always tell me about the camel and the tent, where you know, oh, master, please, you know, out in the windstorm, and he wants to put one foot in, okay? And then he wants to put the other foot in. Oh, please, just one more foot. Oh, please, just let me put my head in. And you know what? That's what I think that this is going to do, is it's just going to start one little thing. And if, and besides, didn't the gentleman mention earlier in one of his own opening statements that they're selling less gas? That the fuel consumption is lower than usual? And now we have to put in bigger tanks to sell less gas? That makes no sense, guys. I don't believe for a damn minute that you're not going to use this opportunity and many more to not expand that airport. There's other ways around, and you guys, this is a small community. You have the world at your disposal as far as leaders and what you can do with this community, and you can make it an amazing place. But it's never going to be amazing with an airport in the middle of it. Why aren't you annexing in all the lands around here, and so that you have a bigger tax base? Why aren't you, if you had $10 million, you could go buy enough land for 2 airports, put a runway on it, and put something, a big enough facility on there. If you can get one $10 million grant, I bet you could get another one. You know, why don't you get a good airport in the right place and make this community great?
Mr. Robert Spears.
Good morning. My name is Robert Spears. My wife Iris and I live in Berry Creek, and we're opposed to any expansion of the airport, including fuel tanks. And I would like to add ditto to everything that's been said.
Kobe Caputo.
Mr. Chairman, and the board, and citizens of Georgetown. My name is Kabi Caputo, Kabi S. Caputo. I have to distinguish because my son is active here and we have different middle initials, so I don't want to have him misrepresented by anything I have to say. I moved to Georgetown about 10 years ago. I live on 1817 Terry Lane, and we're south of the airport, so every plane that takes off passes directly over our house. We didn't realize when we bought the home, because we had to make a very quick move. Our former house had sold, and we were told by our real estate agent that the airport was just very small and had no real impact. We didn't realize how close we were to the airport, actually, because of how you had to move around to get there. And we started, being concerned about noise, that sort of thing, I talked to the manager of the airport at one time. He assured me that the airport was self-sufficient, they had adequate income, they were no burden to the city, and that there were no plans for expansion. All of a sudden, Pflugerville built a new airport way away from their location on I-130, and we lost some business to the airport. In addition, there was a funding, there was a review of the operations, and it found that we weren't charging enough for gas or for the fuel and other issues. And they did a project, they had found that they had to increase all those charges, which they just began doing. And every time somebody brought up a concern of what's happening to the airport, we were always told by the people in, the transportation department in Georgetown that there are no plans for expansion. I'm really tired of jets roaring over my house at 5:30 in the morning. Triple prop planes that make huge amounts of noise. I think I really oppose any expansion of the airport other than what's required by the government. Thank you.
Carl Wills.
Good morning, thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Carla Wills. I live at 126 Brentwood Drive in Berry Creek, and that's the best street in the city, in case you didn't know. I'm here to represent my husband and myself, and my adult daughter and her husband who live down the street in Berry Creek. They would be here, but with the timing of this meeting, obviously they can't be here. I work nights, so here I am. I oppose any finding of no significant impact from the study. I demand a full environmental impact study. I don't really see any benefit to the residents of Serenade, Berry Creek, any nearby residential neighborhoods. If you can think of any, please let me know. As I looked at that slide he had up there, with the increase in the fuel capacity and with those runway expansions, that makes me think it has to be a planned expansion. So, excuse my nervous voice, I'm nervous, but that's just what happens. If anything, let's just follow the trail of money. I think that's going to tell us what we need to know. Thank you.
Barbara Campbell.
Hello, I'm Barbara Campbell. We've lived here on Miramar for a couple of years in Serenade. And even in the 2 years that we've lived here, we've noticed more and more noise out in the yard one day. My husband and I are talking, we have to stop because the plane is overhead is so loud. And even 2 years ago, I don't think that happened. I don't know where the bigger planes are coming from or how this is going, but it does seem like the airport is already expanding. And if we put more money in, it's even going to get bigger. So we're asking to protect our great small town atmosphere. I oppose the issuance of a finding of no significant impact and demand an environmental impact statement on the proposed federal grant, especially for noise and safety concerns.
Mr. Ronald Bendis. Probably butchered that name good.
Good morning. My name is Ron Bendis. My wife and I reside in Sun City in the city of Georgetown. I'm here to comment from an airport user standpoint. My wife and I have a small aircraft based at Georgetown Airport. We're a frequent user of the fuel pumps, maybe at least once a week. When we come in, there's normally a line, and many times one of the two pumps is out of service. This creates quite a delay. You may not realize it, but unlike a service station in cars, when you have to shut an airplane down, go in line, you have to restart it, pull it up, which can cause extensive maintenance to the airplane over time. Secondly, with people milling around, or in a noisy environment, airplane starting and stopping, it could be a hazard to individuals. And lastly, a larger fuel capacity would be quite helpful because on busy weekends, due to the weather being favorable or events going on, it's easier to run low on the fuel supply. And since we're trying to maintain a certain stream of revenue at the Georgetown Airport, it'd be very important that we have a consistent point of access for our users and for the convenience and safety of all involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bendis. Callie Ellington.
Good morning. My name is Callie Ellington. I live at 4404 Luna Trail. About 4 years ago, I ran away from the noisy city life to come to Serenata, make a new life with my husband. I took off work this morning, because I do work, and expressed my opposition to the issuance of finding no significant impact for the fuel farm. And I request preparation of a full environmental impact statement for the proposed 1514 GRGTM federal grant for the 25 component airport 2015 CIP. Thank you.
Bob Meeker.
Good morning. My name is Robert Meeker. I live with my wife at 4404 Luna Trail. I'll be brief. I am strongly opposed to any issuance of a finding of no significant impact for the fuel farm. I demand preparation of a full environmental impact statement for the proposed federal grant for 25 component airport 2015 CIP. I think there's a message here today, and with all due respect from the community. For GTAB, the City Council, we are the bosses of government, not the other way around. Thank you.
I'm having trouble reading this one, Mr. Rodney. Is it Rodney Roy?
Good morning. My name's Rodney Ray, and I'm sorry you couldn't read that chicken scratch, but I live at 3534 Cabin Road, and I've lived there probably over a decade and a half. And when I first bought that property, the airport was my #1 consideration. And I actually went out there the weekend I put money down on it. I went out there that next weekend. They were having an air show, and actually I didn't think it was that bad. I mean, I thought it was, you know, kind of a cool thing, have an air show right there in your backyard. And over time, it really wasn't that bad. It was tolerable. Of course, obviously, when they shut down Mueller, there was a big difference. That's when a lot of people moved to Georgetown, and I was a little bit concerned about it then, but you know, you kept hearing things. There was no expansion going to go on and everything. And in fact, my neighbor was the airport manager at that time, and I would talk with him on several occasions. So, but now it looks like that there are going to be expansions coming up. It is going to get larger, and I am here to oppose the FONSI, and I would like a full environmental study on that, on what's going on, and that's about all I got to say. Thanks for taking time.
Keith B-Bud, is that pronouncing that right?
My name is Keith Peshak, and I have property since 1989 outside the noise zone and outside the crash zone at 800 Oak Crest Lane. I strongly oppose any FONSI finding of no significant impact being issued for the fuel farm. Instead, I demand a full and complete environmental impact statement be prepared not only for the Airport 2015 CIP, but for all federal grants issued for the GTU Airport through the City of Georgetown by TxDOT since 1989. I further demand that the flawed NEPA federal grant review process used by the City of Georgetown and TxDOT for our airports be immediately corrected to be in full and specific compliance with federal law. This literally would be a first for Georgetown. Now, I am a commercial pilot, single and multi-engine aircraft, instrument airplane ratings. No person ever sitting on the city council, which some argue is not a representative democracy, has these credentials, which explains our diagrammatically opposed positions. I bought a house here, rented a hangar here for my little airplane, and moved here in 1989, specifically because I needed a safe airport with a reliable concrete runway and an on-the-field electronic instrument approach for low ceilings and low visibility operations. I have seen this airport become unsafe with no reliable working runway and no on-the-field electronic instrument approach. I will not operate here under low ceiling and or low visibility. I have witnessed theft of FAA grant money, poisoning of the airport environment, institution of anti-race policies and who will be allowed to use the airport, and many, many other illegal things. What bothers me most is the continuing violations of federal law here. Public meetings are not posted, happen at 3 o'clock in the morning, the public's business is conducted in secret or even in total privacy. I have observed contentious and documented citizen objections over the years since 1989 to any increase or expansion of the airport, to aircraft numbers and takeoffs and landings at the airport, to disturbing noise both day and night from large aircraft, to safety from falling aircraft, to environmental issues impacting homes, schools, and churches, and to adverse impacts on property values. These continue to be of the utmost citizen concerns and are also mine, and are all ignored at the City Council and by TxDOT. I am aware that the fuel farm is only one of 25 components of the Airport 2015 CIP. It is the adverse, direct, indirect, cumulative environmental impacts of the 25 components of the Airport 2015 CIP as a whole and of past grants back to 1989 that must be examined.
Thank you, sir. Jim Ray.
Good morning. I'm Jim Ray. I live at 101 Pilot Place with my bride. We have been there for 2.5 years. We bought the house from my mother. She had the house for 8 years. We lived right at the end of the north end of the runway. We knew the airport was there. We enjoyed the small planes. My stepdad definitely enjoyed the small planes. He'd sit out there in a lawn chair with his great grandson and watch the planes come in. I grew up, my wife and I both grew up in Austin. We lived through the Robert Mueller expansion, the big problems with Robert Mueller, and it finally being moved to a proper location. Time, obviously, messed with our memory a little bit. We moved right back into the situation. It was just like that. I hope that that is not the case. We bought this place hoping to live there, retire there. Our grandkids love it. We enjoy it. I'm definitely opposed to any expansion of this airport. Thank you.
Mr. Norris.
My name is Hugh C. Norris Jr. My wife and I have resided at 4400 Luna Trail for over 16 years. The fuel farm is only one of 25 elements of the Airport 2015 Capital Improvements Program, a proposed 90% $10 million federal grant program shown on page 360 and identified in this DEA as proposed federal grant 1514 GRGTM. This new federal grant is the current proposed federal action. To extract the fuel farm, a gas station for aircraft from 25-element group of 1514 GRGTN is an illicit practice termed segmented. The practice is intentional mismanagement of the categorical exclusion review level authorized by the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, for proposed federal actions that have no impact on the human environment. This practice was challenged by my letter dated September 10, 2014 to TxDOT, which has never been addressed by any official. By reference, I'm making that letter a part of this statement in its entirety. The segmented status of the fuel farm eliminates any consideration for its FONSI determination, and its levels of review contained in this DEA are irrelevant and without merit. The new category exclusion dated May 12, 2015 for the proposed 1514 GRGTN contained in this revised DEA is invalid as contrary to FAA Order 1050.1F, which excludes such determinations when the proposed federal action is in the presence of any of the extraordinary circumstances identified therein. The May 12, 2015 determination is directly or indirectly impacted by at least 20 or more extraordinary circumstances. Throughout the years of our residency, we have observed contentious and documented citizen objections to any increase or expansion of aircraft numbers and takeoffs and landings at the airport. Disturbing noise, both night and day, safety of fallen aircraft, night takeoffs and landings, air quality, environmental issues at homes, schools, churches, and adverse impacts on property values have and continue to be of utmost citizen concern and are ours. It is the adverse, direct, indirect, cumulative environmental impacts of the 25 components of this proposed federal funding action as a whole and the past federal grants that must be examined in this or any other hearing involving that program. I strongly oppose any FONSI being issued for the fuel farm. Instead, I demand a full and complete environmental impact statement be prepared not only for the 1514 GRGTN program, but for all federal grants issued for the airport in the past decade. I further demand that the flawed NEPA federal grant review process used by the city and TxDOT for our airport be corrected. Thank you.
Paul DeMeo.
Good morning, Chairman and Council. Thank you for having us here this morning. My name is Paul Mayer. I live in the Golden Oak subdivision. And my main concern is I've been a public servant for over 20 years for a local entity. And this expansion, and that's basically what it's going to be because the fuel cells are the first component or one of the major components for a future expansion. This is not beneficial to the community. Basically what you're stating is that the airport is going to be the hub of the community, and that's not what we want. If Georgetown wants to be in the business of having an airport, that's great. It produces revenue for our community, which we give back to our citizens. But let's take it out further to where we can expand. With the fuel cells comes environmental issues, and we currently have environmental issues at the airport as we stand. I would bet that those fuel tanks that we have underground are either close to being out of date or currently out of date, and that we currently do not follow within the ordinances of TCEQ. The subdivision which I live within is the Golden Oak subdivision. It's basically a bowl for all of the airport's nasty water. There is currently no retention pond at the end of the airport runway, and basically it just runs into a concrete culvert, which is very small, runs down that south airfield, goes underneath Lakeway, right into the Golden Oak subdivision with no diverters, no place for it to go. It basically spreads where it wants to within many residential homes and then into the Common Branch Creekway. That later dumps down into the Granger area. I would request that you do an environmental impact study on the runoff and also the concrete culvert that you're going to build, unless it's going into a retention pond or it's being filtrated. I do not believe the city of Georgetown is following TCQ guidelines. Thank you very much.
Hugh Stowe.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, board members, members of the community. My name is Hugh Stowe. I live at 182 Estrella Crossing. My wife and I moved here about 3 years ago after we retired. We have children and grandchildren living in Pflugerville and Round Rock. We were under no time constraints. We looked throughout the Alton area for a community where we wanted to live. After a number of months, we settled in Georgetown, found a lot, and had a house. We were, of course, aware of the airport at the time, but it looked like a small town airport. The type that you could take your grandchildren out to on a Saturday or Sunday and let them watch a few planes land, and they got excited about it. But the noise was not that great where we live at the time. However, it is clear from this proposal on fuel tanks, which is, as many speakers have already noted, merely part of a plan to expand the airport. Certainly when you propose to expand capacity of fuel by 50% with a declining demand, it would make absolutely no sense unless it was part of a broader plan. And so I think the whole program needs to be evaluated together as one. So I'm opposed to the FONSI and would request that we have a full environmental impact statement, not only on the fuel tanks, but the whole proposal to expand the airport. Thank you.
Hugh Taylor. Hugh Taylor. Okay, going next one, Mr. John Gibbons.
Good morning, I'm from Berry Creek. I'm a voter. There's an old saying that you only eat an elephant one bite at a time. That's exactly what's going on here. We're not stupid, and that's what's insulting about this meeting today, is we're not stupid people. We understand what's going on. We need to have the first line of defense for us voters is the board. And they have to listen to this. You can ignore us at your own peril. Since I've been here 14 years, I've had people come to my door twice. One of them was the Fly Friendly program. Does anybody remember that? That was a bill of goods sold to us that we just sat by and watched it happen. Nothing really changed there. And then the next one was the tower. Remember how that was going to change everything for us? Changed nothing. The airport is the third rail for a politician in Georgetown. Thank you.
That's all the speakers we had for the public hearing. So with that, I'll declare the public hearing to be closed. And for the board, there's no other agenda items, so unless we have any other thoughts, we all adjourn. Have one go ahead.
Just, I've been asked to let everyone know that the District 5 City Council Representative Ty Gibson will be holding his quarterly meeting tomorrow regarding city issues, not just the airport, but about the city in general. So if you'd like to attend, that's going to be 10 a.m. at Berry Creek Country Club, and the guest speaker is our city manager, David Morgan.
And your comments today will not be recorded into the minutes unless you email them to the secretary. She has say you spoke.
No, these things they don't tell you. Just kind of find
All
out
right,
the last minute.
Chairman, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Motion made, second. All in favor? Aye, adjourned.